All right, so for this training, we're going to take a look at alcohol and its effects on the brain. More specifically, its effects after a traumatic brain injury. Alcohol itself is a central nervous system depressant. This means that it slows down your brain's functioning and slows down your brain's neuronal activity. Now, let's take a look at your brain. Your brain is very complex. It's made up of over 86 billion neurons and over 100 trillion synaptic connections. Neurons can either be excitatory or inhibitory. Excitatory neurons stimulate other neurons to fire and respond while making you more sensitive to stimuli from the outside world. Inhibitory neurons suppress responsiveness and prevent excessive firing, all the while slowing your brain down and making you less responsive to outside stimuli. Your brain needs an equal ebb and flow of excitation and inhibition to function normally. After traumatic brain injury, this ebb and flow is a little bit harder to achieve, and not having this ebb and flow on this synchronous neuronal firing can sometimes lead to things like seizure. So looking at alcohol consumption, drinking alcohol actually disrupts the balance of excitation and inhibition. This means that it increases the brain's inhibitory response and blocks the brain's excitatory response. So let's take a closer look at alcohol's interaction with your inhibitory response. Alcohol interacts with GABA. GABA is a primary inhibitory neurotransmitter of your central nervous system. Alcohol binds to GABA receptors and keeps these channels open, which means that you're going to fire more inhibitory response, making you less responsive to outside stimuli. That's why your reaction time tends to slow down a little bit when you're drinking. And then you may even be less responsive to outside stimuli, things that maybe you would be more responsive to normally, that just don't tend to bother you while drinking. Alcohol also interacts with your excitatory response, more specifically interacting with glutamate, which is an excitatory neurotransmitter of the central nervous system. Alcohol binds to the glutamate receptors, but instead of opening them, it keeps them closed. This doesn't allow your brain to fire its excitatory response and continues to make you less and less responsive to outside stimuli. As mentioned earlier, your brain needs an even split of excitation and inhibition to function properly. When your brain has too much excitatory, it will cue the inhibitory process to fire, and then also vice versa. When consuming alcohol, once it's metabolized, your brain will fire excessive amounts of excitatory neurotransmitters to counteract the negative charge from the inhibitory neurotransmitters that have been firing. This is fine for the average person. We're able to recover relatively quickly, but if you ever had a hangover, you're very sensitive to the light, you're very sensitive to sound, maybe certain pains are a little bit more painful and so on. That is partially due to the fact that you're firing excessive amounts of excitatory neurotransmitters. Individuals with traumatic brain injuries may already have hardship with that synchronous neuronal firing to begin with, or they may be on medications that may already slow the brain down. There are some really ill side effects of having too much inhibitory neurotransmitters firing, anything from disinhibition to blackout to even worse, like cardiac arrest. That's why alcohol consumption and traumatic brain injury is considered a no-no.